Hey, what's going on, everybody? BDO44 coming into another video. Okay, so I just got through listening to Joe Rogan's apology in regards to saying the N-word, as well as the clip that's going around about the Planet of the Apes joke that he made. Not really interested in commenting on the Planet of the Ape joke, not so much. That one's not something I have an opinion about right now at all, really. I did accept his apology. I did. As a black person, I can honestly say that hearing the N-word out of a white person's mouth or any non-black person's mouth is going to make a lot of black people feel uncomfortable. It's going to hurt some black people's feelings, and it's going to make other black people not feel anything at all. There's no one way to zero in on the opinion of blackness, because blackness comes in every form. There are black people who agree with me. There are black people who hate me for my skin color. There are, you know what I mean? We have allies that are not black that will fight for us and fight with us, and that we'll fight with and fight for. And then there will be people on our side who won't like them for that. It's no way to zero in on blackness. We come in many forms, and it's about the mindset. So I think that's the most important thing to say before I start whatever it is I got to say, is that there are going to be black people who don't agree with me, and that's okay. Because it's not about agreeing with one another. It's about having a conversation and expressing just my point of view, and that's it in regards to my video. The next thing I want to say is Joe Rogan has a lot of enemies, and they're attacking him right now, and they know exactly what to do. When you make the type of money he makes, when you have the type of view that he has, the type of voice that he has, everybody is trying to reach his level. And anytime you put yourself in a position to be vulnerable at that level, there are going to be people ready to attack that vulnerability. There are going to be people who will wait and waylay into the right moment to jump you. And I think some of that's going on right now. He has his enemies. Whether he earned those enemies through whatever goes on, or if it's just people jealous, I don't know. But I know when somebody's being attacked, and that man's being attacked. That's the second thing I want to say. Third thing I want to say is this. I understand he has a black daughter, and I appreciate him not bringing that up in this 5-minute clip. I think that would have been something that diluted his message. But I can bring it up. He does have a black daughter. And when he opens his mouth to say that, he puts himself at risk of putting her in a position to feel a certain way, to have to answer certain questions, to have to figure out how she feels about what's being said, to come to some conclusion that maybe she should otherwise not have to come to because of it. And that's important. I don't know how she feels. I've never seen her face. I don't know nothing at all. But I'm just saying, as a person of that she is of biracial background, it puts her in a position to have to possibly face certain things that otherwise this would not provide her. And I would imagine that's regrettable for her dad. The next aspect of this I want to say is, you can say whatever you want. But for non-black people who say the N-word, there are volatile consequences. It can be nothing. It can be everything. But the point is, depending on who you're around, will determine how that goes. It's a many different ways it can go. Most of the time, I would imagine, it won't go bad. People would just say, I don't appreciate that or whatever. But some people will pull out a gun. Some people are ready to fight. Some people will then look at you as an enemy and start, plotting against you. It's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. You draw a line in the sand with a lot of people when you say that word. And I think it's very important we understand that. I don't imagine that it's an easy life for white Americans trying to navigate through these waters that we're living in these times. I don't imagine there's a way to understand that word and how best to respect it, especially when you hear someone like myself say it, even though I try my best not to. You hear a person who's African American or someone who's of black skin using that word in a positive light. But what you have to understand is they take it upon themselves when they use it to both choose to turn it into something positive, but they also have to bear the understanding that it derives from something hateful. Every time we say it, we know that our attempt is to turn something negative into a positive. And as we say it, we bear both burdens on us. which is what needs to be understood about the black word, the N word. You have to understand that about that word. When you're not black saying that, you don't bear the burden of its intent from which it came from. You don't have that on your spirit or on your back or in your understanding that these were words that were said to belittle you and make you less of a man. Words that were said to people who look like you right before they lost their lives, or words that were said to keep people who look like you in their place as they were working for free, slaving, going through cruel and unusual punishments in the name of just simply being black. That's a burden that we have to hold as we attempt to do the impossible, which is turn that word into something positive. And that's why I think a lot of black people would prefer white people don't say that, because you don't bear the negativity of it. You're just able to derive from the positivity that we've tried our best to transform it into. And in some cases, we can't tell the difference between whether or not you're saying it in the form of love or hate. And putting ER or A at the end of it doesn't really do that. It's a way for a lot of people to try to grasp the impossible, but it doesn't quite do it. And I know a lot of people aren't ready to say that, because it's an understanding that allows us to live in this conundrum that is the N-word. But the fact of the matter is, ER, A, GRA, it's all the same. Because it's still something that we have to bear the burden of the negativity and the history of it. And the trauma of it. When it's said. When we say it, and when we hear it. So it's an understanding, as a black person, that when I say that word, that my mother didn't appreciate me saying it. She had a different point of view on that word entirely. She felt like all people shouldn't say it. Not just white people or someone who's not black, but black people too. She felt very offended when she heard it out of anyone's mouth. And I didn't share that with her. But that was the conundrum from which the word provided. And it separated families in certain cases. In my case. Eating breakfast, sorry. But this is real. And I don't think many people have been able to articulate it in a way that brings it home. I'm attempting to, but I'm not sure I'm able to either. The fact of the matter is, it's an impossible place for both sides. Both white people who are trying to live in this space of hearing us say it, but being told they can't say it. The suppression of not being able to use your mouth in a free world that's supposed to be yours, because we understand it's to be a white man's world. But it's a place that you can't live in without being criticized or have consequences that are dire, sometimes way beyond what is really right for the intent from which you've said the word. Lose your family or lose your jobs, rather, or even lose your lives, even worse, rather. There's a lot of consequences, as I said, volatile consequences that may not meet the intent. But you're not bearing the burden. When people strike back at you for using that word, you're not bearing the burden of what your intent was. You're also bearing the hatred of the burden that's on our backs from those who meant to say it in ways that were meant to belittle. You're not facing the consequences of what it is that you're saying. You're facing the consequences of the people who intended to harm us in saying it, and have thus harmed you by creating this environment for which you have to navigate and suffer ridiculous consequences, volatile consequences. Fact of the matter is, it's a hateful word, so it's not going to do any good for anyone who says it. But because we bear the sin of that word, because we've already faced the consequences of that word, we have found the perfection within ourselves to turn that negative into a positive. But we can't seem to find a way to not be offended by hearing you say it. So even we haven't perfected that. That word was created in hell. And if you try to turn it into something that's lovely, it's only going to do so much. It's like putting sprinkles on poop, friends. That's what it is, for lack of worse terms. And no matter how much cologne you put on it, no matter how many times you throw it in the dryer, no matter how many different ways you try to turn it into something, it's still the same stuff. And that's what I'm trying to get everybody to understand. So when you say that word, you don't take it as seriously as maybe someone else does. That's cool. But if you say it around the wrong person, there will be volatile consequences. You say it in the wrong setting, there will be volatile consequences. And even if you say it to yourself, in the confines of your own home. Eventually, the sin of that word will find you. You saying it in the dark with your buddies, he keying. That word and its intent, that hate, it will find you. And there's no way to take it into a context that is loving if you're not someone who bears the burden of it on their backs. And even worse, the conundrum of the one drop rule in regards to who's black and who's not. That's an impossible circumstance from which to navigate. I've heard black people say they don't want to hear half black people say it, but it depends on the shade of black they are. It's impossible. It's impossible. We've been trying to navigate through this situation, turning this into a positive for a long time, but until we get to a point where we can hear everybody say it without being hurt, there's no way to effectively do so. So while I understand that Joe Rogan is trying to bear the burden of what it is that he said, this is bigger than Joe Rogan. It's much bigger than Joe Rogan. This is about the hate that continues to rain down on us from the intent from which that word was created. And the fact that it doesn't just hurt black people in the end, it hurts everybody who says it. See that clearly when you think that word. So no matter how much money you have, look at Joe Rogan, got all the money in the world, got all the followers in the world, and this word was said over a 12-year span, and it's barreling down on his nose right now, in a time when his half-black daughter is wide awake and grown enough to also have to answer questions about it herself. He didn't intend that 12 years ago. He didn't intend that when he was saying those words. He didn't intend that. Me personally, I get good vibes from Joe Rogan. Every time I see him on TV, I like watching what he has to say. Even if I don't agree with him, good vibes. And that's kind of what I go by. But at the same time, there's no way to knowing what a man's thinking or what a man's going through as it pertains to what his intent is when apologizing for saying certain things that he meant to say when he said them. But that's the point. There's no way. Because this word is so evil that it doesn't allow for room for proper interpretation. Whether it's an E-R, A, G-R-A, however it's spelled. It still comes down to treacherous waters for all who say it, who aren't black. And the conundrum of knowing that we have to respond either by not being offended as black people, hiding our offense in certain settings, or outright reacting to it in whatever volatile way you may as black people. And then the problems it causes as well for black people in watching other black people. Maybe I'm a black person who doesn't mind hearing you say it, but guess what? I got 100 black people behind me who are going to be mad at me for not holding you to the fire for saying it. And maybe another 100 black people who will look at me crazy for doing so. It's impossible. The whole thing's impossible. And it doesn't even take into account the people on the sidelines who don't understand this, who may hear me say it and want to say it back to me in love. And then they face those volatile consequences because they say it around somebody who doesn't understand any of this and just wants to fight anybody who says it ain't black. Now you got good people getting attacked for saying things that they meant in endearment just because of the example seen. Impossible. It's evil, y'all. That's all it is. It's pure and utter evil. And when you throw sprinkles on doo-doo, it's still doo-doo, buddy. That's the reality that as I see it. And I'm sure there are other angles that I'm not even able to give you. But look at Joe Rogan having to apologize for saying a word that he didn't even intend to use in this form that it was taken. And all the backlash that comes with it and all the power that he has being at risk. It didn't help him. Moral of the story is, the N-word didn't serve him nothing positive. It may not have gotten his life taken. It may not have necessarily been something that, you know what I mean, he got beat up for or shot at for. But in saying that word after all those years, look what it did to him now. Whether he means what he's saying in his apology or not, he's compelled to make an apology for something that he says he didn't even mean to say in harm. That should tell you right there how impossible that word is. So that's what I have to say. You know, I'm not going to promise you guys I'm never going to say that word again. I'm not going to promise you guys I will ever utter it in this camera. I'm not sure what I'll do in regards to that word, but I will remember that I made this video, and I think it'll help me in how I react to that word when said by black people, non-black people, and myself. to remember that that word was created in hell for the sheer notion that it could belittle me and people who look like me or what have you. Keep us in our place. And ultimately remind us that we're not human. That we're not on your level if you're a non-black person. That we're supposed to be beneath you by the sheer understanding that we were born African. That's what the N-word is about. And if you agree with that, that's unfortunate. But if you don't agree with that and you still utter that word, there's follow the consequences. For not only non-black people, but for black people as well. So that's what I have to say, man. My name is BDF44. I hope I helped. I'm not telling you can't say that word. I'm just telling you this is what comes with it. Look around. Nothing good comes from this.